Hi, and thank you to whoever it was that gave me the 5-star rating. Okay, today we're talking about restorative justice. Yesterday we spoke about Truth and Reconciliation Commissions and how they employ a different means of dealing with the aftermath of some kind of huge catastrophe in a state. So rather than seeking to prosecute everyone who had ever been involved in the crimes of apartheid, we tried to come to an alternative arrangement whereby we acknowledge what has happened and we try and take that truth and move forward with it as a nation, allowing for nation building and allowing for greater strength. On the domestic level, restorative justice is often used in the youth offending area, where it's considered to be particularly capable of intervening with a young person before they, get involved in a life of crime, that we can intervene and that we can show them the error of their ways and move forward in that way. And so today we're talking about restorative justice in that more domestic setting, and in particular we're going to talk about youth offending teams because they are one of the main means by which we engage in that. So Section 37 of the Crime and Disorder Act identifies the role of the youth justice system, and it basically says that the role of the youth justice system is to stop people aged between 10 and 17 from engaging in further crime. And it identifies a series of ways in which it can achieve that. It says that justice should be provided quickly, that there should be swift justice, that we need to ensure that offenders understand the consequences of their actions, so that the young offenders who have committed crime understand that their crime was not victimless. Often people who engage in, graffiti or even drug taking or theft, see that they don't see that their actions have had a consequence on other people, and they don't understand what consequences they might have had. So we focus on getting them to face up to the consequences of their actions. Intervention comes as early as possible so that we can stop this from becoming like an ongoing habit or some kind of life of crime type argument. The response needs to be proportionate to the individual, and there's an emphasis upon reparations, trying to give something back to the victim, and also placing an emphasis in young offending on the parents and their parental responsibility. So if a child is engaging in crime, then the parent has some responsibility for that and needs to be included in the process so that they understand that they have some responsibility for what's happened. And also, we seek to achieve this aim of the Crime and Disorder Act through a multidisciplinary response involving all kinds of actors, not just the criminal justice system, not just the police and the courts, but others as well. Okay, so since April 2000, we have what are called YOTs, or youth offending teams, and basically they are multidisciplinary teams that try to coordinate the response of the youth justice system and all the given actors to an individual who is engaged in some kind of criminal behaviour. They begin that process by carrying out a standardised assessment, and in that they will ask, why has this person committed an offence? Why has this young person turned to crime? They'll look at the family circumstances of that individual. They'll look at the health circumstances of that individual, and particularly, do they have any mental health problems? Is that going to be something? Is that what's driving forward their criminal behaviour? They will consider whether that person is in education, whether they are attending education. So are they playing truant from school, etc.? And what risk do they pose to themselves and to society and to other people? And based on this standardised assessment, they can come up with a picture of the individual and then move forward and develop an individual response to that case. So they collect the information and then we move forward with an individual response. They also employ a supervisor in any given case, so that there is one person, a social worker, a police officer, some kind of individual who will take a specific interest in this individual. And then, having focused on that, having derived this response, we can move forward and develop a plan. So the focus then, as you can see, of this restorative justice and of youth offending teams is not on how can we punish this individual, what's the correct punishment. It's more based on, well, let's look at all the factors which have caused this individual to offend, and then let's try and come up with some response that means that they are less likely to offend again in the future. So it is Tony Blair's tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime kind of response. And the process involves the victim. As we said, restorative justice looks at everything that's involved in the situation. And one of the factors which will be taken forward is to have a negotiation, perhaps one of the main models which is used, have a negotiation involving all the parties to try and derive a plan so that we can tackle the offending. So having done our assessment, we might ask, well, okay, if there's a problem with school, with truancy, we'll contact the school and come up with some kind of plan to ensure that the offender starts attending school. If there's a problem, if we're trying to emphasize parental responsibility, they will be involved in the negotiations surrounding how we are going to react to this young person's offending. And the further party to be involved in that is the victim, who will get some kind of say as well. So that's the basic idea. And then we put forward a plan about school, about reparations to the victim, possibly apologizing to the victim, possibly the example I've given in the slides is if someone was caught graffitiing on private property, they might have to clean that graffiti off, which is reparations to the victim. Now, if we think about the traditional criminal justice system, the victim has a very little role in that process. They may be a witness, but that would basically be about it. And the ordinary criminal justice system focuses on the state's need to prosecute offences, rather than on the needs of the victim. In restorative justice, however, the victim has a fairly central role in determining how the offender is going to be punished and what we're going to do with them. So that can be seen as being empowering for the victim, and in that sense might be seen as positive. The weaknesses that we discussed about restorative justice yesterday in relation to truth commissions can also be applied here. Although the plan is individual, and the goal is that it's proportionate to the individual's needs and actions, and although it's taking into account everything about that individual, there is a sense in which we might lose the ability of the criminal justice system to provide a similar response to similar offenders, and in that sense it would not be proportionate. If we're treating two people who've committed the same offence differently, then from a Kantian point of view, according to Immanuel Kant, that's an abuse of their rights, and that might be considered to be a problem. On the other hand, those who support this type of restorative justice would say that it is proportionate to that individual, and that's very important. If we think about the problems involved in the rights of the child, and indeed the European Convention on Human Rights and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child state that a young offender has the right to have their case dealt with by an impartial tribunal. A negotiation involving a family group conference or involving the parents, the police, social workers, the victim, etc. is going to involve an awful lot of adults and one child, and it's possible that the child will feel that they don't have, that they can't be heard, or that they're kind of being ignored by all of these adults. And that obviously would be a problem, because that then wouldn't be a fair process. Also, that would be a problem because the young offender would not feel attached to the process, and therefore that would have, that would defeat the whole purpose, which is that we're supposed to be trying to integrate them into the process so that they take responsibility, so that they take, to use kind of management speak, ownership over their behaviour. Okay, so that's what restorative justice is all about in the way that it's used with youth offending teams. If you just do a Google search on youth offending teams, you will find an awful lot of information, trust me. But what we're trying to do here is, if you read through the workbook, you consider what we talked about with truth commissions yesterday, then you can develop some kind of critique of the idea of restorative justice and how it operates. And I think that you should find that quite interesting. Alright, thank you very much, take care, and goodbye.